feelings, the affirmation of love through those feelings alone. The egoist is preoccupied to the exclusion of all else with his own I, his ego, and so seeks the good of that I alone, caring nothing for others. Egoism precludes love, as it precludes any shared good, and hence also the possibility of reciprocity, which always presupposes the pursuit of a common good. All right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to get more deeply now into this whole thing of sensuality and what's really, especially going to have something for the men and something for the women here pretty soon. Okay, on page 159, under the category structure of sin, the first paragraph on halfway down. We have said that sensuality and emotionalism furnish, so to speak, raw material for love. That is, they create states of feeling within persons and situations between persons favorable to love. Nonetheless, these situations are not quite love. They become love only as a result of integration, or in other words, by being raised to the personal level, by reciprocal affirmation of the value of the person. Okay, bottom paragraph, about the second sentence, on concupiscence now. Concupiscence is a consistent tendency to see persons of the other sex through the prism of sexuality alone, as objects of potential enjoyment. Concupiscence then refers to a latent inclination of human beings to invert the objective order of values. For the correct way to see and desire a person is through the medium of his or her value as a person. We should not think of this manner of seeing and desiring as asexual, as blind to the value of the body and sex. See that? We're not supposed to be asexual. That is not what purity of heart is. We're not supposed to be blind to the value of the body and to sex. And that's where a lot of people are coming from today. That is not purity of heart. To pretend, to sublimate or hide. It is simply that this value must be correctly integrated with love of the person. Love in the proper and full sense of the word. Concupiscence, however, looks upon a person as a potential object for use.
Inversion of value, what exactly is this meaning?
The inversion of value, meaning he means like you're placing the emotional, sentimental and sensual above the person.
Wouldn't it really come together? Because then we go back to that old thing of spiritual higher than physical.
Yeah, it's supposed to be integrated. Yeah, it's supposed to be integrated. But in the inversion, the priority is in the top priority is always the value of the person. You love them, attract them. Yes, it includes all that they are, those attractions, but ultimately you're attracted to them and you choose to love them precisely because of their value as a person. So that's the higher value. But in concupiscence, it gets flipped around. I'm attracted. I love you because of your body and my feelings for you, or this and that.
It's almost unnatural to separate out the parts of the person. That's what concupiscence.
Yeah. Mhm. He'll be able.
But because we do that, because human beings can do that, when that happens, then we've got to order those things.
Yes, right.
And then eventually, I mean, ultimately put them together.
Yeah, oh yeah, put them together. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And he's going to get into that in the next couple of pages, exactly. In fact, at the top of the 160, in his italics, it always means something important for him. Hence the distinction between love of the body and carnal love. See, love, it's like St. Paul's distinctions, Love of the body can love someone's body in the right sense, but carnal love would be the love of the body becomes an end in itself, primarily for pleasure and egoism. Concupiscence is then in every man the train in which two attitudes to a person of the other sex contend for mastery. The object of the struggle is the body, which because of its sexual value, body and sex, arouses an appetite for enjoyment. Or as it should awaken love because of the value of the person, since it is after all the body of a person. That goes back to what you're saying, sister. See how integrated? Yeah, you can be attracted to the body, but it's the body of a person. You don't separate out the two. Concupiscence itself means a constant tendency merely to enjoy, whereas man's duty is to love. Okay, now down at the bottom of that paragraph. Sensuality is the capacity to react to the sexual value connected with the body as a potential object of enjoyment, while concupiscence is a permanent tendency to experience desire caused by sensual reactions. If we are considering the structure of sin as part of our analysis of sinful love, it must, however, be emphasized that neither, and here comes a classic, neither sensuality nor carnal desire is in itself a sin. Neither sensuality nor carnal desire is in itself a sin. Catholic theology, I hope everybody's listening. Are they online? Are we online? Yes.
Yeah.
Catholic theology, for those who want to be very, very Catholic, which you all want to be, yes, sees in concupiscence only the germ of sin. It is difficult to deny that the germ of sin is present in the constant tendency to lust after the body of a person of the other sex as an object of enjoyment, when our attitude to persons should be supra-utilitarian. Yeah, going beyond. Right, supra-utilitarian, going beyond utilitarianism. So, yes, there is a germ of sin. The germ is there in the desire because of original sin, but in and of itself it is not sin.
Some Catholics are really hung up about the Jesus.
Yes, very much so. And guess what? For those who are, time and time again, you'll see Terra Wojtyła, later Pope John Paul II, currently Blessed John Paul II, refers to who? St. Thomas Aquinas, Captain Catholic himself. So he, for those of you who have hung up on concupiscence and are want to be so magisterial, fine. He's talking about St. Thomas. He's basing this on St. Thomas. Okay. On 161, this is going to get better and better. 161, the second paragraph. Neither sensuality nor even concupiscence is a sin in itself, since only that which derives from the will can be a sin. Only an act of conscious and voluntary nature, voluntarium. Although the act of will is always interior, both interior and exterior actions may be inherently sinful, since they all originate in and are sustained by the will. Further, a sensual reaction, or the stirring of carnal desire, which results from it, or which occurs irrespectively and independently of the will, cannot in themselves be sins. Yeah. It becomes a sin when, as we were talking earlier, you start to fragment, pull it out, and it starts to take on an importance, a focus it shouldn't have. In other words, it's disintegrated. And it starts to become, you start to make it in your mind. This is all in your mind. In your mind, you start to make it, not the body. The body doesn't do anything. You, in your mind, focus on a part, an aspect of the person, whether it's sensual, and you start to make it now focus. You're enlarging it, and seeing it primarily for pleasure. Example, the Sistine Chapel. Floor-to-ceiling nudity, right? Now, if you walk in there and you are seeing something, you are lusting, that is entirely your choice. That's what your sin is. You can't say, well, Michelangelo made me sin because he painted these nude people. No. His intentionality and what he presented, as John Paul II said, he had the right view of the incarnation, really, is what he was painting, and of the redemption. If you come in there, you could look at that and say, wow, look at this, look at the beauty of these paintings. Look how he did this. How does this man render this human body like this? Unbelievable. Now that's, and it's sensual. The bodies are sensual. That's what makes them so magnificent. They're beautiful. They're sensual. Now if you go in there and focus on that and start to enlarge the sensual for its own sake, extract it from the whole person, from the whole intention of the paintings, then that's where it becomes the sin. Yeah, exactly. It's our reaction and reaction of our will. This is why, and this is where one of the things like Christopher West tries to say, and where some people don't understand him and criticize it, like he says, it's not, and I do too, and so does this. It's not just a matter of, well, that woman over there should cover her body more. I should look away. That's part of it. But ultimately, a real love, real purity of heart comes from, the real virtue comes from, it is my duty not to lust, no matter what's in front of me. It is my duty. That person has a duty to present themselves, modestly too. But it doesn't, because what's happening in the name of purity and being real Catholic is the responsibility is taken off of ourselves entirely and put onto that which is outside of us. And it's ultimately our personal responsibility, the act of our will. Right. Very good. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And because we've been, for a long time in the Western world, modern culture, we have had this progressive changing of how to see the human person, how to see really all the created order. It's disintegrated. We've taken the physical out from the spiritual. And once you do that, then you can't see the physical correctly, nor do you present it correctly. See, Michelangelo's paintings are correct because he still weds the physical with the spiritual, with the theological. Through those paintings, he is communicating theology. He's communicating the theology of the body. In other words, this John Paul talks redemption and the incarnation, and eschatology. In other words, Michelangelo has painted on the Sistine Chapel what John Paul II would call in the Theology body original man and eschatological man. In other words, how we were, all of our beauty, and how we'll be even beyond in the next life. It's in between this time since original sin, especially in the last several hundred years, that our view of the body, of all creation really, has become more and more disintegrated and distorted, so that we no longer see the physical in light of the spiritual. And see, the whole thing of theology of the body is John Paul was saying, if we can put the two back together, that's going to be the purity of heart. That will be how we, a little bit, like he says, an echo of how it was in the beginning, but also how it will be in the next life, where we're headed. Now, this is the part that a lot of people have a problem with. They can't put the two together. How can you talk about the body, sexuality, and God and holiness over here at the same time? But you can and we must, because that's how it was intended. That's the truth of it. And that is what is being truly Catholic. Catholic is about one word: integration. It brings it all back. It puts Humpty Dumpty back together again. You know, we've parceled him out. This part of Humpty Dumpty is shh, bad, go evil, dark. Don't talk about that. This part of Humpty Dumpty is wonderful and holy and pure. We have this soul, and we pray, and we try to see no evil. But there's parts of us that are don't look at, don't think about, don't talk about. So we got to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
I think part of that whole thing is, I see something, I have that non-sinful reaction, which is just a normal reaction.
Yeah.
And then I think that's what people either feel shame because they think that's sinful.
Yes.
Or they actually do choose to lust.
Right.
And then it comes back again to this thing, well, and because I am proud and I refuse to admit that I'm not perfect and that I have to work on this or whatever, I blame outside of myself.
Exactly.
So whether I haven't sinned or I have sinned inside, my reaction because I'm proud and not humble,
right,
because I don't understand all this stuff,
right,
I blame it.
exactly.
It's women's fault, or,
right,
or it's bad, or I just say
right,
the body's bad.
Right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. You hit it right on the head. That is it. See, today, so I'm so glad we ended today because we're really coming to the threshold. I call it the threshold that we have to cross in order to come to, again, to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, to put civilization back together, to come to real purity of heart. And we're afraid of it because for so long we've seen with a veil what we have considered to be normal or holy or pure has in fact not been. It's more secular, more at best it's Protestant.
It's a denial of the gift, like Christopher West always says. It's a denial of the gift. Right,
denial of the gift. Oh, really? We'll have to have the Father Tom Lawyer tour to the Sistine Chapel, right? We'll have to bring neck braces because we'll be like this for hours. Okay. At the bottom paragraph on 160. If we are considering the structure of sin as part of our analysis of sinful love, it must be, however, be I read that, right? Okay, yeah, sorry. Let's go to let's go to bottom of 161. Here we stand on the threshold of sin and see that concupiscence, which seeks continually to induce the will to cross it, is rightly called the germ of sin. As soon as the will consents, it begins actively to want what is spontaneously happening in the senses and the sensual appetites. Now that's exactly what Sister was saying. See, you have a natural attraction, natural, if you want to call it arousal, that's okay. But it's concupiscence now is where you choose to want to then make that arousal, that sensual reaction, the end in itself. That's the difference.
And it's always going to be outside the context of a loving man.
Yes, yeah.
So the only time you can say yes is if you're in the context of a loving man. And so everything else is going to be included.
Yes. Because, like you said, from then onwards, this is not something merely happening to a man. That's what I like to say. Oh, I can't help it. That's how she was dressed. Oh, 162 at the top. It's not something that's happening to a man, but something which he himself begins actively doing. At first, only internally, for the will is in the first place the source of interior acts of interior deeds. These deeds have a moral value, are good or evil. If they are evil, we call them sins. Now this next paragraph is a real blockbuster. This is 162, second paragraph. In practice, there is here a problem with some people sometimes find it difficult, quite difficult, the problem of the boundaries of sin. Objectively, the dividing line is drawn by acts of will, by conscious and voluntary assent of the will. But there are people who have difficulty in identifying the borderline. Concupiscence in human beings has its own dynamic, by which it endeavors to become a conscious desire, an act of will. And hence, anyone who lacks the proper power of discrimination may easily take as an act of will what is only the prompting of the senses and of carnal desire. Get it? Like that, the famous line about, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle that attraction. Really what he's saying here. A sensual reaction follows its own course for a time, thanks to the dynamic inherent in concupiscence. Even when the will not only does not assent, but expressly opposes it. An act of will directed against a sensual impulse does not generally produce any immediate result. In its own psychological sphere, a sensual reaction generally runs its full course, even if it meets emphatic opposition in the sphere of the will. No one can demand of himself either that he should experience, here's the great, no one can demand of himself either that he should experience no sensual reactions at all, or that they should immediately yield just because the will does not consent, or even because it declares itself definitely against. This is a point of great importance to those who seek to practice continence. There is a difference between not wanting and not feeling, not experiencing. See how important that is? Stoicism is not purity of heart. And just because
it's almost like not knowing your own body. It's like once a physiological reaction is happening, because it's not just something that's happening at one level of feelings up here. Your body's reacting.
Yeah.
Like, you can't lower your heart rate by an act of will.
No, exactly, right. Right, and it's not sinful that your heart is beating because of some... Well, yeah, in terms of how you...
hey, I'm not headed to a marriage. If I see a really good-looking guy, I'm going to notice him. Yeah, but that might go behind your eyes or your words. Well, then that's where the act go behind your eyes and your words. Then you're getting into deeper stuff. It's the act of will that I make not to pursue where my feelings could take me. The act of will is not going to stop me from,
right,
really,
exactly, yeah.
Desire, no.
Right.
But there's people who really seem to that's what the Pope or Wojtyła is saying.
Yes.
There, is that people think, well, I made the actual will. How come my feelings aren't?
Exactly. Yeah.
Too. So I must not have made a good act of will. So maybe I just sort of follow my feelings.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what That's what can happen. I mean, when you touch something very important, sister, that without the right attitude towards this, you can send people, and unfortunately, that's where I think a lot of people are at today. You can send them towards a hopelessness. I can never. I mean, guy, like my priest friend, I think I said it to you one time before. One time, he came sitting in my room, comes in there, he plops down, and he goes, "Tom, I think I could be a saint if only I didn't have a sex drive." And I said, it's because you have a sex drive that you can become a saint. But see, he was probably feeling that there's just no way I can just not have these feelings.
Right.
Right. Boy, he thought that was wrong or sinful. Mm-hmm. No, no, no. The thing it heads towards marriage is any kind of action, physical action. You know, those things are the things that would be you have to be very judicious about because they order. Like recently, I explained. I told someone, a guy, kind of talking, counseling, single guy, and just kind of like where he was at and all that. I told him, you should not date. Do not date women because you do not see marriage on your horizon. And when you date women, you're really, what you're doing is you're using them because you want the comfort of dating. Now remember, when we say dating in our culture, what makes dating dating as opposed to just having a friends with a female? It means you can get physical. I'm not.
In the movie Courageous, it's coming out in the. He
Oh,
tells
is
the
it?
teenage daughter, the movie Courageous, the father tells the father tells the teenage daughter, anytime a boy asks you to go anywhere, it's a date.
Yeah.
Like individually.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Like, the boy was trying to pretend it wasn't.
Yeah.
She was trying to pretend it wasn't.
It's right. It's true. It's very true. And it said because with the date by its nature is kind of ordered towards exclusive relationship, which in itself is ordered towards possibility of marriage. You know what I mean? So if in dating you express affection, I'm talking about exclusive affection. I'm not talking about giving somebody a hug. You can do it to anybody. Give them a kiss on the forehead or whatever. Friendly gestures that we do with people that we're close to or enjoy company, whatever moments with. That's I think you understand what I mean. But if it's like dating, basically means this is the only one that I do certain things with physically. Okay, those are the things that are ordered by their nature towards an exclusive relationship, which means marriage. So if you're not going towards marriage, don't date. To enjoy and be naturally in the company of women and men, whatever, freely, sure, it's okay.
I think we need to admit that we're screwed up. I think that's the thing that we don't want to admit that. We want to, like Jesus said, we want to justify ourselves.
Yeah.
And if it's not that you're such a bad person or I'm such a bad person. It's like the whole human race is screwed up.
Yeah.
Welcome to the human race.
We are, yeah.
Admit that.
Yes.
And admit our brokenness.
Yeah.
We'd take half the burden off ourselves.
We would. And that brokenness, like Bishop Sheen says, sin is in the blood. It's in every cell of our body. It's true. I mean, it's even when we think we're basically good, still it's in there, and we always have to be so, reflective, self-reflective, take that spiritual pulse check. Like the person I said this to is a very, very fine person, a very fine person, but he still had to get in touch with that part of him that, and he understood too. And I said, ultimately you're being selfish because you're using the woman. Because if you're being exclusive with her and expressing what's the only thing what's going to go through her mind, what hope is she going to naturally develop in her mind, especially at your age, because the age of this individual and the age of the women he would date, they want to be married. They just don't want to have, I just want to spend a few minutes with this guy. They want a relationship of permanency.
That's the importance of women to understand this, so that she cannot let that man use her. It's up to her too. I mean, that's what she has to understand this, so that she does not let that man use her.
I saw.
Heads of course marriage with someone who is interested in her.
Yeah, she has to. In fact, that's going to be the next point. It's going to be on the next page for the.
Because sometimes young women really don't understand that. They have to grab something.
Yes, they do. I saw that yesterday. They were showing some preview of some show coming up, and they showed one clip of it. A woman standing there, and the guy says to her, "Oh," they introduce each other and says, "That's a really pretty dress you have on." She said, "Let's get this straight right up front. I'm not interested in you." And he walked away. So it's kind of like what you're saying. She got it out there right away. All he said was she had a nice dress on. Yes, and that's on the next page. Next thing we're going to read, page 163. This is for the women now. Emotional subjectivism. This is 163, the first big paragraph there. Emotional subjectivism makes us susceptible to the suggestion that whatever is connected with genuine emotion, whatever, must be recognized as authentic in its emotional content is good. Hence the temptation to reduce love to nothing more than subjective emotional states. If we do this, love finds its whole content and sole criterion in emotion. The affirmation of the value of the person, the aspiration to the person's true good, to union in a common true good, none of these exist for a will subjectivistically fixed upon emotions as such. In these circumstances, sin arises from the fact that a human being does not wish to subordinate emotion to the person and to love, but on the contrary, to subordinate the person and love to emotion. This goes back to what we're saying, but this is a tendency more for the women now. The first part we did so far was for the men. This tends a little more towards the women. Sinful love is very often emotional, saturated in emotion, which leaves no room for anything else. Its sinfulness is not, of course, due to the fact that it is saturated with emotion, nor to the emotion itself, but to the fact that the will puts emotion before the person, allowing it to annul all the objective laws and principles which must govern the unification of two persons, a man and a woman. Authenticity of feeling is quite often inimical to truth in behavior. Subjectivism in values insinuates yet another false suggestion, that what is pleasant must be good. The temptations of pleasure, of enjoyment, often replace the vision of true happiness. This happens when the will is intent on the quest for pleasure as such. Once again, temptation is not merely an error in thinking. I thought this would be lasting happiness, but it was only a fleeting pleasure. But results from a disposition of the will, which wants unconditionally the pleasure desired by the senses. It is in these circumstances that love is most likely to degenerate into the gratification of carnal desire. This is on top of 164. Concupiscence and the spontaneous stirrings of lust are not in themselves sinful. How many times have we said that today? Isn't it amazing how he keeps repeating that? Concupiscence and the spontaneous stirrings of lust are not in themselves sinful. What makes them sinful is the deliberate, conscious self-commitment of the will to the promptings of the body, which conflicts with objective truth. You're right. You're absolutely right. They're saying now that there's less, something about like divorce has decreased. That's because people aren't getting married. You know, it's kind of
Marriages are on
marriages are on the down. Yeah, people just don't get married. They just continue to date and cohabitate, but they don't marry. You're right about that. They would get on the business of marriage itself if they knew this. You know, better society. See, you know, you talk about movies and stuff. It'd be just wonderful to have movies that would, through the characters, incorporate these kinds of things. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole vision behind it, virtue over vice.
Yeah. And they would see through the character, that where everyone can relate, and every viewer can relate to that character. They would see these virtues emerge.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, it always has to be a struggle where the person is struggling with it. Coming to having to make the hard decision and so on. So that's what people identify with. Digressing a little bit about movies. Yes, and friendship can be very deep and intimate. It should be. But yeah, if you want more, you have to get married. You have to not date. Yes. See, we talk, in our Constitution, as wonderful as it is, it has that clause, the pursuit of happiness, which I think needs definition because it becomes hedonism, yeah. And in itself, exactly. So many good things, but I'm going to jump because I've got a few minutes to remain, so I want to get to two last things that will end. On page 170, we get to chastity itself. We've kind of been wading through what is not, right. But here's what chastity is. On page 170, about 2/3 down the first paragraph. To be chaste means to have a transparent attitude to a person of the other sex. Chastity means just that, the interior transparency without which love is not itself. For it cannot be itself until the desire to enjoy is subordinated to a readiness to show loving kindness in every situation. This transparency in one's attitude to questions of the other sex does not mean artificially banishing the values of the body, or more generally, the values of sex to the subconscious, or pretending that they do not exist, or at any rate have no effect. Chastity is very often understood as a blind inhibition of sensuality and of physical impulses such that the values of the body and sex are pushed down into the subconscious, where they await an opportunity to explode. I want to make sure we got this point in before this. 170, the bottom paragraph. And this is what happens, if it's not integrated, you push it down thinking you're being true and Catholic and all that, and it's going to explode. Okay, chastity is very often understood as a blind inhibition of sensuality and of physical impulses such that the values of the body and of sex are pushed down into the subconscious, where they await an opportunity to explode. This is an obviously erroneous conception of the virtue of chastity, which, if it is practiced only in this way, does indeed create the danger of such explosions. This mistaken view of chastity explains the common inference that it is a purely negative virtue. Chastity in this view is one long no. Whereas it is above all the yes, of which certain no's are the consequence. The virtue of chastity is underdeveloped in anyone who is slow to affirm the value of the person and allows the value of sex to reign supreme. These, once they take possession of the will, distort one's whole attitude to a person of the other sex. The essence of chastity consists in quickness to affirm the value of the person in every situation, and in raising to the personal level all reactions to the value of the body and sex. This requires a special interior spiritual effort. For affirmation of the value of the person can only be the product of the spirit, but this effort is above all positive and creative from within, not negative and destructive. Is not a matter of summarily annihilating the value of body and sex in the conscious mind by pushing reactions to them down into the subconscious, but of sustained long-term integration. The value, body and sex, must be grounded and implanted in the value of the person. Now this is where he's going to go. You'll see in Theology of the Body, where his whole thing is Christ takes us to the inside, interior, what's inside a man. The objection that chastity is merely negative is then incorrect. The very fact that it is bound up with the virtue of moderation means that it cannot be so. For by moderating the feelings and actions connected with the sexual values, we serve the values of the person and of love. True chastity does not lead to disdain for the body or to disparagement of matrimony and the sexual life. That is a result of false chastity, chastity with a tinge of hypocrisy, or still more frequently, of unchastity. This may be strange and startling, but cannot be otherwise. For recognition and appreciation of the true value of the body and sex is conditional on the reevaluation of which we have spoken. The raising of these values to the level of the value of the person is characteristic of and essential to chastity. Thus, only the chaste man and chaste woman are capable of true love. In the marriage ceremony in my church, the prayers for the couple continuously say, God grant them a chaste marriage, matrimonial chastity. Now, people at the wedding are sitting there hearing this thinking, chastity? They're getting married. What do you mean, chastity? They can't have sex now? You see how we don't know? No, it means this very thing. What we're praying for. You see how brilliant the church is? In the prayers of the wedding ceremony, which are centuries old, the church knew this stuff. That's what John Paul did. He just went into the soul of the church. He keeps saying he's not coming up with something new. The church says, see each other always as persons, even though you're married. Well, they do in my Precana. Yes. This is why this has to be the paradigm that we teach everything. Yeah. You're right. Right. This is why we got to get you right. The church, the teachings out through media, through movies, books, internet. It's pulling back the veil. It's unveiling, unleash like a flock of pigeons. Just unleash the church. No. Right. And that. Right. Yes, they are. That's so hard. Oh. Like I said, I think 500 years from now, we'll look back. We should make sure we get good records of everybody who was married, had a happy, holy marriage and family life. And they will automatically be sanctified. That's what I think. But the saints of our day, they're one of the real saints of our day. Certainly people live this life, but in our day and age, if you have maintained a healthy, happy, holy marriage and family life, I think you are the living saints of our time.
I think, when you have the mind body split from the big heart and the kind
Yeah.
of revolution and everything, I think there's a sort of wisdom of the masculine, though, to stick with the body.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we can teach them through the body.
Yes. Yeah.
And their experience.
Right.
Because, all the intellectuals the scientists and everything, they tripped out on the mind. We're living
Right.
in denial and all
Right.
that, but they chose the mind.
Right.
And the rest of the people were like, you know what, it's time for that nonsense.
Right.
It's like, we're going to stick with what we know, the body,
Right.
and its experience, and our feelings, and that's where we go.
And this is what, to refer to Chris West again, this is what he refers to when he points up somebody like Hugh Hefner. He's like a symbol to him, an icon of exactly what she's saying. He did it in more of an extreme way, but it's like, the heck with all that. I know this is good, and it can't be bad, so I'm just going to go with it.
Even though he's like, ego needs to go.
Yeah, egos, yeah, exactly.
Like,
Immature, right. He's there, right. 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 Ain't out of the dumpster, they say. Yeah. No. You know, I often think of that, but I'll tell you, you shouldn't feel that way. You're not wasted, because I find that for older people, you're not old, but older people. Well, okay. All right, it's on TV, it's on the internet. She said it, not me, you know. Look at the same color as her blouse right now. Look at it. No, you know what I think about people your age? Because they had the same reaction. I said, gee, why didn't we know this? I think my reaction is, no, not wasted at all. You lived a lot of this without knowing, having all the vocabulary. In as much as you could, you lived it. You know, not wrong things. You lived a lot of things more or less silently. You just knew there were certain things right or wrong. You tried to live by them. You didn't have all this now, but you lived it. You still kind of knew it and lived it in your own way. Now we have, like I said, the veil is being pulled back. This articulate exactly.
But what you can have is that interior life. The purity of the interior life that never goes away. And there's no age in there. The spirit is ever young.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we don't understand either. Everything's externalized. So, so there's like a denial that we have an interior life.
Yeah.
And so, yet Jesus keeps saying, that's where it all.
Right.
We can go inside, we can do whatever we want inside, as long as we don't externalize me.
Right.
No, you can't be all messed up in there. You've got to be all ordered in
right,
there.
Right.
So you can love the thought of that, of your life you've already said.
Right. In the heart. It's all in the heart. That's where John Paul took us, because he said that's where Christ took us. And his answer to everything was in the heart, what's inside a man, person, you know.
So what she's saying is that they say that Jesus Christ, they're not very sure that they see the children and children, and that you can what you're bringing is the
Yeah.
purpose for all of us. He is living what you wish you could have when you were younger, and you need your help to help us to live out what we're
Yeah, see, people your age.
Yeah, and also, I have a lot of hope in the things we work with ordinary. So easy to have on
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're all heading towards the heavenly marriage.
Yeah. In fact, that's exactly how we're going to end. How providential. The last paragraph on the last page, 173, to end this chapter and our summer here. How providential this is. And again, another hint at the theology body to come. Page 173, first paragraph, about the third sentence down. It should be added the truth about the union of the human person with a personal God, which will be fully accomplished within the dimensions of eternity, at the same time illuminates more fully and makes plainer the value of human love. The value of the union of man and woman as two persons. Significantly, the Old and the New Testament both speak of the marriage of God within mankind, in the chosen people or in the church. In the writings of mystics, of the conjugal union of the human soul with God. Let us now examine the two components of the virtue of chastity, shame and continence. And that's where we'll pick it up in September. Really get into a lot of application. That was 173, and we'll pick up on 174 in September, the metaphysics of shame. That's where we're going to get into some great stuff. This is some of my favorite sections on what real modesty is and about nudity. Things that, again, once again, are going to be eye-openers for people. We have to reconfigure how we're used to looking at things to a much deeper, purer, more mature understanding of purity of heart.
I think about that slut walk that they're doing all over the
Oh,
city.
yeah. Yeah.
Some cop, I think in Toronto, right? Some woman was raped in Toronto, and that cop
Oh.
made a comment that, well, if they didn't dress like sluts, women would not be raped.
Ooh, ooh, ooh,
And
ooh,
so,
ooh.
like, all these, like, feminist groups and everything
Yeah.
have been doing slut walks, where they just went down Michigan Avenue or whatever, show up, and so the women dress, like, half naked, basically walking down the street. And they have, like, on their stomach slut, and they're wearing lingerie, and all this stuff. And so, and they're saying my body is not an institution. And I've been thinking, I've been thinking about it, like in the context of theology body. And it's like, and it is and it isn't. You know,
Yeah. See.
Yeah, I mean, they're right. They're right in one sense, but when there's that, yeah, modesty, their obligation is
Right. We still have people online, are they? Oh, thanks if you're online. Thank you for tuning in. We'll pick back up in September. Yeah, it is. Did you know that? Every time. People all over the world are hearing you.
Oh, my voice. Okay, they won't know. You don't hear me now.
Okay. See, right, as usual, with the women, there's truth. There's some truth in what they're doing, but again, because we're disintegrated, they're choosing the dumpster. They're saying one truth. They're saying here, no, our bodies are not automatically at a, what do they call it? Enticement? Or what the word is? Invitation. And men have obligation not to see them that way. At the same time, as we'll cover that here, that at the same time, women, again, it's always reciprocal. Women have an obligation also. There's men have an obligation not to lust. Women have an obligation to help men in that regard and to present themselves according to the dignity of themselves as women and as person. And to understand, as John Paul said in here, women need a certain insight into the psyche of men to help them understand about this whole issue of dressing and presenting their bodies. So there's a lot of truth in both what they're saying, but it's disintegrated, right? They both, the cop who said this and the women who are protesting, both are still eating out of the dumpster. But they both have a truth there. There's a truth there, which is why we need to buy some billboards or something.
Need to own billboards.
Yeah, we should have a picture of the women. Yeah, we do. Picture of the woman and picture of the cop, and say, they're both right. Find out how. Tune into St. Paul, Daughters of St. Paul. Really, in a sense, there's something like that that would get people to, oh, there's another way. There's a way to look at this thing instead of the, or. Yes. See, because now the cop, in saying that, he's voicing a certain frustration that men have of always having to battle their natural inclinations because of how women present themselves. In other words, it's like this. Man is going about his business, thinking about work or his family or whatever. A provocative billboard or woman dressed a certain way, presenting a certain way, comes into his view. He now has, that's an assault on him, because it's actually a visual assault. He now has got to be thrown into a struggle, if he's sincere about purity of heart. He has to go into a struggle now that he did not want to have. He did not choose to have. Now he must do it. Now, what's a guy going to feel then? He's going to feel a certain anger, resentment, especially if he wants to be, he wants to try to be pure of heart. And here comes this thing that's going to make that harder for him. He didn't ask for that. He isn't looking around, where's a woman I can lust at? He's going about his business. And this gets put in his face. Now he's thrown into the struggle. And as John Paul II said, it's not the same with women. They don't go into that struggle as readily by visuals. It's more by the emotion, sentiment, feeling. But the man does it by visually, which means it can happen like that, all around him, all the time. So men are, especially men who want to be virtuous, they're constantly battling this. And so what the cop was voicing really was kind of a bit of a universal anger that men have for being always thrown into this struggle. No, that's not, no. No. See, no. No, don't get married for that. That's what we're trying to correct. I'm not saying it's, it's like, man, say a man is there with his wife. A woman goes by, provocatively, whatever. Now he's got a real tension because there's this part of him that, just like John Paul, that the natural, intuitive, sensual thing, again, it's hardwired in him to notice. Remember, God created women so that men would notice them. Okay? So it's hardwired. He cannot not notice them. Now he's got to do that, and his wife's standing there. He may just be a little glance. He walk by, he just burp, and he doesn't want his wife to see that. He can't look at her, can't take a second glance. He has a fight taking a second glance, So now he's thrown into this tension. You see? And he didn't want that. In fact, I once read a book by a priest who actually said, and I think rightfully so, in a sense, this is a form of reverse rape. Women are visually raping men this way. Because they're intruding on that part of them.
And it's like, come on, why are you dressing?
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to look at me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't have like, why? What did I do? Yeah.
But it could be something real simple. A lady with the cutest feet you ever saw today, the cutest toes and two skills to some example. I mean, it's the prettiest little feet you ever saw. Well, you couldn't do anything. You went back to turn on by feet.
Okay, right. And that's where, again, the guys have to be. Yes. That guy.
I hate to quote this comedian. His name is Dave Chappelle. I do not endorse him by any means whatsoever. Some of my friends are watching. There was a show on. He was talking about women that dressed immodestly, although he didn't use more colorful words to describe it. But he said it's kind of like walking down the street and you see a police officer dressed in a police officer's uniform. You go up to the guy you need help, and he says, "I'm just dressed this way. I'm not really a cop." And he said it's the same sort of thing. It's very confusing.
Yes, very good.
I thought that was a really interesting point that this
very
guy
good.
People made.
That,
and it's like women should wake up and say, don't you get it? These men are trying to respect you.
Right.
They're trying to not lust after you by saying this stuff and letting you know how they're reacting. But I think on one hand, it's that thing, well, they want to be lusted after. They want to have that power and control over men. And so,
right.
even though they're denying it, they're saying no.
The man, I'm not saying the men are they're helpless in the initial moment. Okay? In a sense, helpless. But they're not helpless after that. But after that is a struggle. Why throw the guy into that struggle? Why distract him? Why does he have to go through that tension, And then, if they're trying to be, if they really high developed consciences, then they're in the confessional. Oh, gee, Father, I looked at a woman. Why do that to the men? Yes,
Yes.
exactly. We do. Precisely. Right, right. And see, it's so reciprocal. If women were getting it this right, their needs, if men responded to women properly, they wouldn't have to do, as a society, they wouldn't have to do this because they're both basically hurting each other. They're both taking advantage. And again, because we don't live theology of the body. We don't live what we're teaching here. And so we have all this, we just hurt each other. We create these tensions and and then Hollywood everybody plays that. Everything is, they always play up this male-female tension to everything's got to be male-female tension. The tension of the sexes, the genders.
Is it wrong to assume that people genuinely want to do what's good for them? Right? People have this inherent sort of desire to do what's best for themselves. So I think by pushing the self-respect as being the cool, the good, the right thing for you, that might be an interesting way to try to promote something like this.
You're right. We have to, in this day and age, you're touching on what I think is the new evangelization, where everybody's about themselves basically today. We kind of live in our, all right, so, and John Paul's very clever about that. We can condemn that, or we can say, okay, we'll use that. We'll make it all about you.
Right.
But then lead you to virtue.
That's right.
You're exactly right, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and Salem, you're trying to show them real happiness. Everybody wants happy. You're making it all about them.
You don't tell people.
Right, yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Like,
Yes.
you want more.
Right, right.
And it's like,
We're offering.
you do. Because the only way you're going to get
Right.
it is, do it his way. And
Right, exactly. And right, that's the beauty of evangelization. Mm-hmm. Right. Oh yeah, terribly. Yeah. Yeah, they don't have a theology of the body. They don't have because you don't unless you're Christian. I mean, the Jewish faith, yes, to a large extent, but the fullness of how we have to see each other can only come through Christ, by seeing through Christ, in the Christ event, because only in Christ, and this is the key to everything, only in Christ was there the incarnation, where the invisible God infused himself into the physical, so that the wedding of the physical and spiritual happens in Christ. If your faith does not have that, you will never ever have an fully integrated view of sexuality in a person.
So this would be a response to the Jews. I thought sometimes I thought of what Jews might think of the elements of the body, and I have the sense that they might say, well, there's nothing new. It's already in the next man. So cover your neighbor's wife. So this is all just rehashing the same thing.
Yes, they have. Well, they certainly have a big piece of it, the Jewish faith, because
in the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah. In the beginning, yeah.
Original plan of God.
And they have a certain, like when you read the Psalms they had in their heritage, of course, a sense of sacrifice, of priesthood, of offering back to God, things of the earth. So there's an implied incarnation there but they haven't accepted the fullness of that incarnation. So yeah, they have the basis of it. You got the fingers on it, but it comes to this fullness in Christ. Islam had a little more difficult time with it. Incarnation, integration, seeing with both eyes, I call it. Incarnation and integration. God comes into the physicality, which means then we see everything is integrated. That the body and the soul are not separated. They're different entities, but they are united. We don't separate them out. And they were never meant to be separated.
Isn't that like the constant struggle? Do people think like, oh, I should make a habit, and if I keep trying, it's gonna get easier.
Mm-hmm.
Does it always get easier? Like a habit of being patient and being integrated.
You can take practice.
Yes.
Because there's always more levels.
Yeah.
Trying to get on this level. Then once you get to that level, you're not finished. You're at a level where you have some understanding more fully how to spin there's another level.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right. It's like well, it's yes and no. It's easier at the same time you come to a level of challenge. Yeah. The challenge never really stops, but it does become more and more um, habitual.
So it requires less maybe focus of trying to always keep it good. You're already in that realm of it. You're just going to another level.
Yeah.
And think about ways, the downstream ways.
So you need less of the comfort of your will.
Yes. Right. Be less effort in it because but of course that's what sanctity is. Ultimately, your view becomes more and more integrated. But at the same time, you never let your guard down.
You know, I was thinking about the charismatic feedback on Monday, and I'm kind of young, and they're much older than me, even, and women will say, well, I don't want to be encouraged to sing because I'm closer to my heavenly.
Wow, that's good.
And it's true. You're closer to that where we're all going on.
I had a priest friend in his 80s who said to me, you know, Tom, I love being in my 80s because I can say whatever the heck I want. They figure either, oh, he must be right because he's been around, or, well, you gotta understand he's 80s. He feels total freedom. Just loves it. It's unusual. Usually people complain, but he loves being in his 80s. Yeah.
Do people know about the play Sister Calling My Name?
Oh, yeah. I think I got some information on that, yeah.
Yeah, it's playing, actually this is the last weekend, today and tomorrow. It's by a new theater company of young Catholic Christians. And it's actually a really good play. So it's playing one block from St. Mary Dean Church.
Oh, one more?
Yeah.
In the theater? Or?
Yeah, there's a real professional theater club.
You have some,
I'd like one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the people involved with this?
I know one of them. If you happen to know Dan Keeley.
I don't know. I'm
from Florida. Boy's from Florida. He's brand new in Chicago. Been here 3 weeks.
Okay.
He's going back. He's doing an internship here, but he's going back, and hopefully we'll return, right?
Yes, it looks that way.
After you graduate.
Yeah.
But this is not a comedy. Is it a comedy?
Oh, no.
Oh,
It's a tragedy. It's about I can sum it up. It's about it's a big character. A man, his severely retarded sister, and a nun who was taking care of the sister. And there's some flashbacks as to what it was like when they were teenagers. But when the play starts, the man has totally removed himself from his sister's life. His sister lives in an institution. He wants nothing to do with her, not even to see her. And the nun is trying to convince him to enter his sister's life again because that's what she needs. And he resists a lot in doing that. Because it was an unpleasant, to him it was an unpleasant part. It brought up unpleasant memories and he just wants to forget that. It's very good. It's not really related to Theology of the Body, but it has a lot of Christian and Catholic themes in it. It's very good.
Oh, it's
tonight at 8 o'clock.
Don't say that.
Oh, no.
Doesn't every page on this isn't anything new. It's just
I'll find it. I'll take notes and I'll give you a whole list. No, it sounds great, and it's good. Some more, I call it pushback. Pushback by the cat. You know, plays, movies, media, really, when they start pushing back and take it back.
It will take you about an hour to recuperate from this. Everything gets stirred up with that. Isn't that problem?
Thank you.
Oh, settle down.
This is a magazine.
So,
this is a quarterly magazine that published with a friend of mine back in Florida. This sister gave me a share yesterday. Look at that. Founder of
His brother's a filmmaker, both of them had huge conversion experience.
So that's kind of what all this comes to. One of the reasons why I'm interested in sister can tell you if you want to get one. My name is Royce Hood. I go to Ave Maria School of Law in Naples. And my brother actually is a filmmaker, and we had a documentary about Immaculate, who's a Rwanda genocide survivor. And so this transcends the church in a way that it deals with human rights, it deals with women's rights, it deals with all sorts of things. Sort of the idea is that we try to suck as many people in as possible. And it's called Kabeho. It's about a place where Our Lady appeared in Africa and told people about the genocide that happened literally every month later. And this is any case. So
It's a film.
yes, and
Documentary.
yeah, and actually, yeah. Yeah, well, and actually, Steve McAvetti that did the Passion of Christ is doing a full-length feature. This is a 1-hour documentary. It's coming out first, and the full-length film will be coming out about a year and a half from now.
It's a feature. It's a full-length film, like a dramatization.
It's a Hollywood film, yeah.
Okay, so it's not about.
There's two different things. The thing I'm telling you about that we're looking to present it in July here in Chicago is a documentary. It's a 1-hour long film, and then Steve McAvetti has something else going on that.
It's not done.
Not done yet. Okay. But so I'm interested in this because we're trying to find a venue for it. And we want to do a screening of it, and Immaculate will be here to speak.
Really?
And so you'd all be invited.
So you're here for the summer?
I am. Just for July, or end of July, maybe. I'm not quite sure yet. So whenever the Lord wants me to leave, I will.
Do you have a date already for her visit?
We're looking at a couple different date possibilities, possibly the weekend of the 29th of July.
Okay.
But it's not set in stone yet because we're extending her availability and then us being able to find a venue.
I'll tell you about the St. Michael's Film Festival. It happens in August.
Okay.
Every Friday, run by a girl named Dell, who's very pro-life.
Okay.
The original idea for the festival was that it was going to be a covert pro-life film festival.
Okay.
It's a lot of pro-life ideas without saying that.
Sure.
She may already have her 4 films set up for the 4 Fridays in August.
Sure.
But I wanted to tell you in case
we
doesn't, and in case the Immaculate.
I am gone, but I could always fly back if we got a screen. You know.
But that would only be in August.
Yeah.
Well, I knew WTM that had a baby survive abortion, and that baby grew up and talked on WTM.
Wow, that's so cool.
That was really something, yeah.
Now, do you have a moment now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One
Babies that would like to. Mom, we have tried to do it. But all in love and kindness. She said it was with love in her heart. No, we can't.
But they don't know what to do. That's why we need to keep the find it and the people who don't know film outside of the creative part. Say what is it? This is about his life and this is the grace of God is find it. Beautiful film.
Yeah, it's like God did that.
The guy who did the guy who wrote Florence of Arabia.
Oh, wow.
And Man for All Seasons, Robert Gold.
Oh, wait, I remember now, and I forgot your name.
Well, great to
And you know, Robin, she had mentioned that I didn't recognize her.
My hair is grown
out.
out.
I
I
realized
last month I saw your and then I was at like
No, but now that you mention it, I remember all of it. Yeah. In a flash, I got it. Yeah, that's right. It was you. I didn't know that was you. That's okay.
Like nobody can relate to it. And actually, I pushed both of these. I was really excited about those days. Finish Civil War. I learned 0. not both. And so I was really pushing my open friends because I really wanted to rally this to the this is horrible thing happening. Rah, 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 just because. And pushing something that was failure of as within the big world.
And it was an accurate portrayal of the man.
It was not an accurate portrayal of the street. I mean, the events were, even if I pushed my open big friends really hard. He had a sharp tongue. He could be sarcastic. He could, push people's buttons and stuff. He was not sarcastic. Even though he got to his face after he Charlie Fox got to his face. They did their best to focus on it. Then, so I'm watching this movie, and what you do in actual life is you start off with the main character. You find one character, unless you do the Robert Altman type ensemble, right? Or Woody Allen does ensemble. This is not an ensemble. You start off with this journal. I'm talking about my father. The over Act 2, the father's the original. He starts narrating. Whoa. So we don't care about this journalist anymore. We're getting more into the older father, the flashback to the young father. Goes through the whole Civil War, and there's this three characters just popping up on the side. In actuality, this is a completely fictitious character who never had a friend who actually lived in the street. They had a fictitious character coming in to show the story of this life. So he said, well, why are we seeing the street? We don't care about this little one-dimensional goody two-shoes guy. We're supposed to be caring about the other guy, the father. So we're going along, and we're not investing in any of these characters because they're breaking all the screenwriting rules, literally making rules. And we're going along, and we get to the end, and there's this huge reveal. I mean, super, uber, like, over the top reveal. I don't know if you've all seen it.
I haven't.
Okay. But we didn't care because that was the mother of the guy we don't care about. And all of a sudden he comes back in Act 3, and we're supposed to care. And we don't care. And Sister Ann just went, well, listen, she's not a movie person. Her inner sense is going like, this is, she didn't want to see the end. She just walked out of the room angry.
We ended up but I thought maybe that they were intentional, and this wasn't intentional. I thought they were intentionally trying to, because it was like the whole other movie was itself on the strength, and the strength struggle with that, and there was this was which those are things that help and make a good story. That's what people relate to. And but it's not something that is trying to do that.
This is his moment. Like he's dying. And he's still this crotchety old guy, but he had a sense of confidence because it was Frida, and Frida appeared to be a boy, so it had been really interesting moments, but I didn't buy it. I didn't buy anything about that film. I didn't buy any characters.
I liked it a lot more. I thought it Frida was not that vanilla because of the fight scene early in the movie. Yeah, that part. And I thought it was a way of showing that the saints are not born. No one's born a saint. Somewhat.
And they made this tagline. They don't make this tagline about a side character. And they didn't even put the picture. What was the picture on the movie poster of the other guy, the fictional friend?
Yeah.
Saints are going to. It's not about. You're making a tagline about the Screeva, but this is your main character. He's not your main character. It's the father's main character.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. It's a mess.
I liked it a lot more than that, but I agree there were kind of three different stories. Yeah, it was.
And by the end, and so what's the takeaway? I mean, really into 5 years from now, what will people be quoting from that movie? What will people remember from that movie? The commies come off looking like the best people on the planet. Who gets totally involved in the commies? They're fighting for something. They're out there risking their lives and taking up. We're not really sure what they're fighting for. But they wear these cool red scarves, they have these cool slogans, and they're really committed. And the commies look good. There's not a mention of Franco. We don't even have Franco's name once. This is supposed to be the Civil War. They could have. I'm sorry. They could have had to do that. The story of the story.
Maybe it's an opportunity for us for another movie.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the stream of life is not the time. There's plenty of opportunity.
But I thought they did tell the story of the Civil War through this action. And I took the message of the movie as students and ways to react to the same thing, the Civil War. The fictitious guy reacted with hate, and Friedman reacted with love, even though there was a lot of persecution of him personally and of the church and things that upset him. They had different reactions to the Civil War, the persecution of the church, and what was going on. I thought the fictitious character kind of stood in for all the people who did the hateful things during the Civil War. Evil, bad things. He was the person who did those things, survived the war, and then he had to deal with the rest of life. That's probably people who after every war, people like more effective.
I heard people say like they felt that the character was really that heroic. He didn't see laying down the place for anybody. He was almost buddy because they wanted to have mass sacraments and protecting and coddling this priest figure all through the battle. Approach. I mean, I have to full disclosure. I mean, my friend Barbara was far superior. She was really about to do that, and she told them.
How was it?
It was amazing. There was no fictitious characters or whatever. It was really the story of the left, all things to the war. But like for example, she had a scene there to show like how do you get these really kind of guys? How do you get them? So she had like a soccer game like what? It was like she was really cool thing that he had a soccer game where people hate to death wind up being on the team.
So she the first written was it? Not something that would work.
If you're going to choose a Catholic priest as your main character, sorry for that.
No. I mean,
oh.
Predictable, what I'm sure one day.
No. This is a fully fleshed out character. I mean, you have to be interested in the Civil War. You have to be willing to watch his life history. But it wasn't like a 18 or latitude.
Right, and obvious.
Yeah, and you go like, wow. She show it, but it's in there, and you got a lot of machines in the head. It's exactly like that in war. But she shows the horror of this, like, and it's a very complex field.
And I think that in the movie too.
Yeah.
That there's all these different things going on, and people are formed like the characters. Lasting during the communist for a while, almost. You didn't know what side he was on.
Here's the vibration. Actually, there's one line that I feel like this girl in the mental institution. She says, I learned that God will but I can't pay her. I decided I was going to call it, but it's one random line do not hallucinate. One random line. Right. Okay, it's exciting to start exorcism. The kills of innocent content. Right?
I did.
It's amazing. He's like this, war battered veteran. And he thinks, I work the cell phone or the exorcism. And this is his job. He does this day in, day out. So another devil. Oops, I gotta take this call. I just thought it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And he was so well rounded as a police and nuanced.
I think I just saw an article about
That particular priest that you knew about.
Yeah, I think it was about
Wow. From America, from California. It's not based on Gabriel Amor. It's a big, high profile. No, it wasn't based on Amor. It was based on a Californian.
The girl was
sent to Rome, Texas.
Okay, because the girl in herself, she had a different name, right? She was from Germany.
Oh, no, that's
I'm thinking
Emily
Emily
Rose.
Rose. Okay.
This is the right.
Okay.
Anthony Hopkins plays this elderly priest who is mentoring a
I have
younger
not seen
skeptical
that.
priest, which had a lot of fallacies about it would never happen, certain things about the younger priest. He was a little more one-dimensional. Really skeptical.
This is the right.
The right.
The right.
He wrote the two books, and I told the story and more stories.
Oh.
And he's a meteorologist. Back in the 70s, Rome was casting the word out. He volunteered for the position.
Wow.
The founder was already dead by that point. Anyway, I think it might have been. Anyway, you know how these things go. How to feel. Anyway, Father Gabriel became the exorcist, and it's really apprenticeship. There are no books to tell you how to read them. They really apprentice one another. Now they're starting to have, because like after that, it's two guys who are really important. Most guys in the United States don't have it. Old stuff. So the people just started to see those very effective. He asked the devil why. Now, they interpreted that.
Wow.
I interpreted both. Communism and theology.
I've always said that God is bad and
Well, then we got to really start pushing. You know, I mean, we actually had a summit at the university about theology in the bottle Friday back in March. And we had speakers on, and I don't know how it went. I personally did not attend it. The kind of thing that I think that people out there trying to do. I'd love to talk more.
You know what? Why don't you get us down to I did a short talk this week on one of these things. I think Pastor Copper, his wife is vice president.
Stefan?
Down in Memphis.
Oh.
That sounds a lot.
He and I showed him of that. Of that first center in there. You want to gotta get you down there.
I'd like to get you down there to law school. Yeah, definitely.
There is a backlash against theology advice. Super Catholic. Who are very, rigid and puritanical and everything. And they said sex should be spoken about. Just so you're aware, there is this backlash.
Oh, sure.
Of people who attack, Catholics. They attack this, they attack Father, they attack.
I was president of the Life Group for a year. Let me tell you, I never had more attacks in my life.
From what life group?
From all sorts of folks. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah. But a lot of graces as well. I just sort of took the attack as a grace, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity.
Right.
Will you email me your information? Yeah. Okay.
Father and Lord also asked them why marriage, they always know marriage.
Right.
That I am more than needed by you.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's why Jesus always lets his letter stay in there.
Right. So take all of it.
Yeah. And he'll curse out the devil will curse out Jesus, God, the Father, the Holy Spirit. He's not allowed to.
Why? Really?
Would you let Satan curse your mom?
No, you're right.
Jesus doesn't
That's
allow
what
him.
Jesus starts a lot.
Never curses
Wow.
Mary. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Once you do the devil, then have to answer. That's why he lies.